I was speaking with my colleague the other day about my short story, The Cause in His Creation, and I'm not sure he liked my work. Because after reading, the first words out of his mouth were, "Jesus, can't you write anything nice?" Now, considering the subject matter of my piece, the irony of his words was not lost on me. Gustav Storr's illustration, as seen here, is a beautiful depiction of the not nice qualities of my story, the premise of which is a modern conversion narrative out of the Catholic faith. So I told my colleague, which, when I say that, I mean my father, because, well, it was my father, that sometimes those not nice things need to be spoken about, need to be written about, so that a firm understanding about the non-consensual intergenerational transmission of faith and how it can affect people and affect their faith and produce a questioning and wavering in a person's religious identity, which can ultimately lead to their exodus out of that religion. His head nearly exploded when I told him that my story was loosely based around Dante Alighieri's epic poem Inferno, because in doing so, by placing my protagonist in a metaphoric hell immediately after getting married, the illusion that marriage can be construed as hell runs through a steady vein within my piece. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a fictional story, a place where I was able to explore some of my own questioning without the harsh repercussions many have experienced in reality. The biggest takeaway that I received during my studies of religious expressions within the United States this past year is that everyone, even those who have upsetting religious views to share, are entitled to their personal beliefs and opinions, so long as they do not infringe upon the rights of other citizens. I couldn't possibly infringe on the rights of anyone through my process to create the cause in his creation. So here I am, telling you about a short story I wrote in which a female protagonist unknowingly marries a rapist whose actions are ignored by her family because her Catholic faith does not permit divorce. Told in a first-person narration, the audience is privy to all actions suffered by the protagonist, which ultimately lead her to reject her family, her husband, and her faith, a journey I can sort of relate with to a certain extent. Maybe that's what my father said by not nice. But before we get wrapped up in all of the why, let's go to hell for a moment, shall we? So, here we see the 9 concentric gates of hell found within Dante's Inferno. We have limbo, lust, gluttony, avarice, wrath, heresy, violence, fraud, and finally treachery. By labeling each chapter with a gate from Inferno, I was able to almost summarize what would be happening within the chapter while maintaining an allusion to Alighieri's work. For instance, within treachery, the first gate or chapter the audience is presented, we find the protagonist Rachel in the car driving to her honeymoon with her new husband Jacob. She begins to reminisce while looking out the window about how she came to be married, and the audience begins to understand that she was somewhat forced into that marriage through her mother's actions. Rachel, a naive 21-year-old, trusted her mother to guide her through the transition into adulthood, as any child would of their parent, but instead was met with her mother's refusal to see Rachel as anything other than a member of the church. So, by forcing Rachel to get married, her mother betrayed that trust, an act of treachery. To elaborate, I will read a short section from Treachery. She had insisted on a lot of things over the years. Insisted that my father stop drinking, insisted that she was not blind and that she just couldn't see very well, and insisted that I marry Jacob. She never told me directly, but she didn't have to. My father's soft, deep tones muffled behind their bedroom door resonated through me, through my ear pressed against the wall, as my mother screeched the Catholic proviso that determined no daughter of hers would shame God and live in sin. My father and I prayed that day. Our bodies slumped onto the kneelers, heads bent in contemplation, a whispered argument settled before Jesus' crucified body. It had only been 1 year since Jacob's flannel blanket cushioned our bodies, as we wished upon shooting stars uniting us as a couple. But my mother and Jesus agreed that the temptations of the flesh would spiral into sin if action wasn't taken. She touted Galatians 5:19, shouting that the acts of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity, and debauchery, into the phone after I'd missed my curfew. Chastity meant nothing against Jacob's 9-year age gap, and besides, purity becomes a hindrance of marriage after you turn 21, she scoffed. My best interests had always been my mother's concern. Her distaste for Jacob was apparent the day I brought him home, the week after I dropped out of college. She said her concern was not of money, whether he had any or not, whether I could repay their lost interest in me. My father apologized as he drove us to church that Sunday. I apologized to him and searched the back seat for answers. 3 months before the wedding, my mother watched Jacob's hand dart from under my shirt. Opening my door before knocking, she never saw the hunger in his eyes, never saw him unzip his pants and present himself to me, never saw me recoil at his touch. Her arms flew up like streamers caught in a storm, guttural screams exorcised from her body. After 5 nights of silent Hail Marys and my mother's cold stare, I found answers pressed against my bedroom wall. I could either never see Jacob again or meet him at the nave. As you can see, the figurative hell on earth Rachel experiences after marrying Jacob has just begun. To transition from treachery through the gates towards limbo in a natural manner, I utilized a sort of inspirational quote that I had read from author Flannery O'Connor after reading her work that possessed a heavy religious influence. She stated that, "From my own experience in trying to make stories work, I have discovered that what is needed is an action that is totally unexpected yet totally believable. And I have found that, for me, this is always an action which indicates that grace has been offered. And frequently it is an action in which the devil has been the unwilling instrument of grace. This is not a piece of knowledge that I consciously put into my stories. It is a discovery that I get out of them. I have found, in short, from reading my own writing, that my subject in fiction is an action of grace in territory held largely by the devil." Inserting that moment of grace through the unwilling hand of the devil within the cause of his creation, or rather, to make Rachel's desire to accept grace from the devil as a reasonable action for her would-be pious character, was a difficult task. By making Jacob a rapist, I was able to transform him into sort of the embodiment of the devil. Taken from the book of Genesis, I modernized the Jacob and Rachel story to afford a female voice, which I found was often lacking from biblical stories. Within Genesis, Jacob is duped into marrying Leah, Rachel's sister, and works hard to obtain Rachel as well. After some time, their father gives his daughters to Rachel, and in Jacob's preference to Rachel over Leah, God makes Rachel barren. As Jacob was given Rachel, as well as her sister, Leah, and another concubine to bear his children, the lack of female perspective is hard to overlook. This idyllic picture used to portray their polyamorous relationship is a far cry from what the true message of their story is, or rather, what women feel like in being treated as property given to men without consent. I'm not sure how you interpret this message the Catholic Church has sought to teach its followers, but my interpretation did not sit right with me. Though, at this juncture, my story doesn't feel like a female empowering story, it was important to afford Rachel a sense of agency throughout the remainder of the piece, to afford her an identity that did not originate from her tether to something else, whether that was her faith or her family or her husband. The only catch is that she had to travel a great distance through her marriage to undertake a great exodus out of her Catholic faith to achieve this. Not only did flipping Jacob and Rachel's story propel my story, it also posed the question of whether women are expected to become compliant with their husbands or religions or any other societal construct. As to not stifle this questioning, I afforded Rachel a means to express herself, unencumbered by societal expectations. From treachery to limbo, peppering Rachel's journal entries and poetry, which questioned God, into the story, I was able to fully explore her unadulterated vantage. For instance, the short chapter Wrath, which I will read in just a moment, is composed entirely of such an entry. Here we can see how Rachel struggles to accept that abortion is a sin within her Catholic faith, a realization that dawned after a failed ectopic pregnancy that required medical intervention to save her life. Though I didn't want the allusion to Inferno to become overbearing, I did have fun manipulating Alighieri's work to explore what the river Styx, as seen in his section of Wrath, would look like in modern day. As a metaphor, the bird Rachel writes about within Wrath represents her own struggle to break from the confines of the Catholic Church and the repercussions that follow such an act. So, without further ado, let's get wrathful. Its wings lay flat against the water, beak, eyes, head submerged beneath a fallen branch. It faltered from a tree, wing knotted with leg, fishing lines strung in between. I didn't know it could make that noise. I wonder if it knew how to hold its breath. It spluttered on the surface, exchanged air for water, life for death. In silent reverie, I watched your grace unfold, watched the line snap, watched it rise from that which it wished to consume, salvation. Yet to be saved in your eyes is to bend to your will. Those who fly against your breath cannot ascend on wings alone, and so release the branch to its baptismal place upon the creature's head, wash away every atom, immersed and welcomed by Christ. Why is this your way? Why does there have to be pain and suffering? Your will is cruel at times. You give and then take, put faith in those who blindly follow, punish those who doubt. Do you want me to doubt? Is this why you punish me? Cast aside from family, I have no other than you. Please, Lord, help me fly. But where is this moment of grace, you may be asking yourself? Fed up with Jacob's actions and fed up with the confines of her religion, Rachel ventures out of her marriage and into the night within lust. There, at a bar, she finds a man named Adder, who she quickly forms a relationship with. It's revealed to readers, though, that this is not simply lust. Rachel develops feelings for Adder, an act that could not have been possible without her escape from Jacob and without her escape from Catholicism. So, when viewed in the context of Connor's act of grace, we see that Jacob is the devil who unknowingly pushed Rachel towards love, though it's a sin, so bear with me. Because life does not stagnate after a person finds love, the story had to go on, so they say. Ending in the limbo gate with Rachel giving birth to her son Benjamin, a feat she could not accomplish after a failed pregnancy in her marriage to Jacob, which produced scarring, which made it difficult to conceive. She suddenly shifts back towards her faith. This is the moment of grace. Rachel is afforded a moment of rebirth through birth that was gained through adultery, which is a sin against God. Unknowingly, a sort of God's forgiveness message appeared in the final pages of my work. I think that if I didn't focus so heavily on the bad that drove Rachel to sin and leave her family and religion, that this nice moment wouldn't have made much sense. Like I said before, sometimes the not nice things need to be written about and explored so we can understand why a person is on their unique journey. Thank you.